2025 is the last year that CEOs will be managing human-only workforce, because we're now going to have human and digital employees working side by side. Think of a chatbot as a vending machine. But in today's world, the AI agents would be like a personal chef. Customer service and support continues to be the most prominent and most common use case. The beauty of this whole creative relationship with AI is what I call compound learning.
What I've seen it already do is allow humans to be more human.
Your AI agents are only as good as the quality and the consistency of the data that you're providing to them. Almost 80% of an organization's data that sits in your company today is unstructured. So these are things like emails, PDFs, and Slack conversations. And now AI agents can actually sift through all of this data, structured, unstructured, videos, transcripts, etc. And then it can basically give you the answer.
Is there like an ideal size for a company to make this investment into AI agents?
If you're ready to hire employees to do a job, your company is already ready. Start small and scale strategically.
What technology you're most excited about? What are you like betting on?
I'm betting my career on this topic, right? So that's what I am 100% focused on.
So what advice would you have for people that are maybe looking at starting their agentic journey now? Welcome back to Experts of Experience. I'm your host, Lacey Peace.
And I'm Rose Shocker. I produce Experts of Experience.
And we just got off the mic with Usman Nasir, AVP of Agentforce Acceleration at Salesforce. And what a fun episode this was. We did a deep dive into AI agents. We've talked to a lot of guests about how they're using AI and AI agents specifically across the different industries that we've been able to speak with. But for this episode, we dove a lot into the actual technical logistics of AI agents and how to think about when to implement them, when not to implement them, and what it actually means to have this dynamic of human plus AI labor or human plus digital labor.
This is a great episode for the skeptics. This was an episode that was packed full of myth busting. We talked a lot about misconceptions concerning AI agents. So I challenge the skeptics out there. And if you know one, send this episode to them, because this was like hearing about physics directly from Einstein. Like this was such a thorough conversation. I would say more thorough. We got really into the weeds. He talked a lot about specific use cases and troubleshooting in real time. What his team does is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lacey, but works directly with their customers to oversee the deployment of AI agents and make sure that it's actually happening at the most productive and progressive level. Something I think is interesting, whenever we get to sit down with AI agent experts, I've noticed them allude to the magic really being in a team's ability to know when to use AI and when not to use AI. Because similar to what you were just saying, Lacey, we'll see all over LinkedIn, we'll see all over online in general, people saying, oh, I'm going to wipe out this entire team and replace it with AI agents. And while maybe that's in our future, we're not quite there yet, which I feel like is what Usman was talking about a lot, was you need to know when to use it so you can allow your human employees to be more human and strengthen the connections they have with their human customers.
Yeah. Well, and he mentioned a quote that Mark Benioff has shared, and I think we've actually shared this in an episode or two before, that Mark believes, and for those who don't know, Mark Benioff is the CEO of Salesforce. Mark believes that there is, within a year, no manager will have a team that's just human labor, right? Like every workforce, every team will be digital plus human labor. And that doesn't mean only digital labor. It doesn't mean replacing the human labor. It means figuring out how can we train our teams that do exist and get them really comfortable with the technologies that are out there. So that way, when we are facing this future world where there is AI agents involved in everything that we're doing, we can really have this collaboration and not this friction that we hear a lot about, like on LinkedIn, like all this friction about AI agents and what the future looks like. I choose to believe, and I'm optimistic in the future of this world where it can be human plus AI. I don't think that means that it will be perfectly pretty or beautiful. I think that there will be some, things that roll out in difficult ways, but that's with any new technology. So I think this episode specifically is just a great masterclass in what is an AI agent, when do I implement AI agents, how do I get started, who is this for, how do I get my team bought in, how do I lead a team that includes digital labor and real human labor. So yeah, it's a full comprehensive perspective on AI agents. And of course, this is a customer experience podcast. So we don't just talk about the actual technical side of this. We also talk about, what does this mean from a customer perspective? What does this mean when your customers are employees, right? So in some instances, the tools that you're making are for your employees. And yeah, we just go through this whole scheme of what is AI agents, what can we use them for, and what the future really looks like.
Yeah, and if you're a Slack user, be sure to stay tuned in through the episode because he talks about a really cool feature of AI agents being integrated into Slack, which I thought was amazing. And towards the end of the episode, he also talks about how you and your team can start training yourselves on how to build AI agents and learning more about this entire new world because it's here.
And I know I did not cover every question we could possibly have about AI agents. So if there's something we did not cover today that you're so curious about and you're like, I want a follow-up, I want to ask more questions about this, drop it in the comments. If you're listening on YouTube, you can drop it in the comments. If you're listening on Spotify has comments now. If you're on Apple Podcasts, I'm sorry, you can't do that, but you can head over to my LinkedIn. You can DM me or you can comment at any of my posts, whatever burning questions you have about AI agent implementation or the future of AI, or just thoughts or disagreements about the perspectives that we're holding. I would absolutely love to hear all of that. So head over to the comments and let me know what questions you have.
Yeah, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, so you can be tuned in on a new episode every Wednesday.
And with that, this is Usman Nasir, AVP of Agentforce Acceleration at Salesforce. Usman, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lacey. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I am so excited that you're here as well. It's not every day that we get to talk to someone from Salesforce. And as everyone from the show knows, we love Salesforce, of course. So I'm so excited that you're here and we get to chat about Agentforce. Before we dive into AI agents today, would you mind giving a quick background on yourself and what you're doing at Salesforce?
Sure, happy to do that. So I've been with the company for around 13 years in a variety of different roles, ranging from account management to sales engineering. And now for the last almost 1 decade, been part of the customer success team, again, in a variety of different leadership roles. For this year, I am one of the leaders in our Agentforce Acceleration team, which I'll talk about in more detail. But really, our team's responsibility is to help our customers become successful on Agentforce, deploy and test and create AI agents. And that's something which we are laser focused on.
Yeah, so you get to kind of see the hands-on execution of Agentforce. And you've been with that team since Agentforce's launch. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. That's amazing. So for those who are maybe new to our show and haven't heard some of our other discussions about Agentforce, could you give a brief overview of what Agentforce actually is?
Sure. And I think before we jump into Agentforce, maybe it's a good idea to talk a little bit about what are AI agents, because there's a lot of different definitions flying around. So it might be a good idea to level set on that. So if you think about Lacey, AI agents are autonomous, proactive applications that can understand, they can reason, they can decide, and probably most importantly, they can autonomously execute complex tasks with or without human intervention. And this really represents, a new world of what we call digital labor, where AI agents effectively augment human workforce by handling a wide range of tasks at speeds and scales that were previously impossible for humans to do those alone. And Agentforce is Salesforce's solution and our platform to help our customers create, test, and deploy AI agents with a lot of configuration options, right? I mean, there's minimal coding required in order to create agents. You can actually create these AI agents with natural language prompts. And that is what Agentforce provides to our customers. And if you think about it, Agentforce is way more than just a platform to build agents. It is what we call a deeply unified platform, which really brings all of your organization's data, your applications, your customer 360 into one place so you can build these agents with configuration and not code.
I think that's a really important point because there's a lot of tools out there that you can build AI agents on now. Like there's just a new startup popping up here and there every single day. And I think what makes Agentforce so unique and so beneficial is that integration piece, that access piece that you just chatted about. So I really appreciate you sharing that. What makes this, if you could give us a before and after of pre-Agentforce, what maybe a workflow looked like, and post Agentforce, what a workflow looks like, just so people can kind of see like, okay, theoretically, I understand it, and maybe giving a little bit more of an example of this before and after of what it can actually do.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And if you think about like the pre and post, AI agents world, I think a lot of us are used to chatbots that have been around for a while
Yeah.
and predictive intelligence that has been around for a while. And I think there's a lot of confusion around the differences between AI agents and these predecessor technologies. So let
Absolutely.
me dive a little bit into what makes AI agents and Agentforce unique and different. So before we jump into that, I think it's also important to understand that we believe that there are five key attributes that make up an AI agent. And those attributes are number one, the role, which really defines the job you want the AI agent to do. Number two, the knowledge, which is essentially the data that an agent needs in order to be successful. Number three are the actions. So these are the actual things and tasks that you want the agent to perform in order to do its job. And then we have guardrails, right? So guardrails are really important because these are the boundaries that an agent can operate under. So essentially, you are telling the agent what it can and cannot do. And finally, the channels, which are essentially the applications and surfaces where an agent operates and lives. And these could be, for example, things like your website or your mobile app. Now, to talk about kind of like the before and after, I think there is a huge difference between the previous AI technologies like chatbots and predictive AI and AI agents. And if you think about it, a chatbot really is something which uses predefined rules, decision trees, and scripted responses in order to interact with the users. They're really limited in answering predefined questions. They cannot reason. They cannot make decisions outside the hard-coded rules. On the other hand, AI agents can reason. They can make decisions based on the context of the interaction and then generate responses that are grounded in relevant knowledge. So they're not really limited to a specific set of questions. And one of the analogies that I always give that seems to resonate is think of a chatbot as a vending machine, right? It has a fixed inventory of snacks or food, whatever you are vending. These are like the predetermined responses, right? There's a small keypad for user input. So you have to stay within the context and confines of that keypad. And it will only give you exactly what you asked for and selected. It's simple, it's predictable, and it works really well if you want to serve that particular need. But in today's world, the AI agents, the same analogy as I gave for the vending machine would be like a personal chef, right? That has an impressive list of recipes, which is essentially the chef's knowledge and their ability to understand complex requests coming from their guests, right? These are natural language prompts that we are giving to the chef and saying, hey, I want this dish made this way. And the chef can not only create it, but they can also learn new recipes
Yeah.
based on our
Yeah.
preferences. So I think that is a good analogy in terms of how AI agents differ from previous
Yeah, that
technologies
is
like
a
chatbots.
great example. Thank you for sharing that. I'll definitely be stealing that and using that in the future. So that's a really good one. With this description you gave, those was it 5 categories for an AI agent? What I found interesting about what you listed is it sounds like a job description to me, right? It's like, this is your role. These are the actions you can perform. This is the knowledge we need you to know. And so when we talk about this being digital labor or a digital employee, you're kind of giving it this job description like you would a human employee or, human labor. So I think it's an interesting shift from like, this is a tool or technology that is very static to now we're treating it kind of like a dynamic human being in certain ways with how we're training it, and we're going to keep training it, and it's going to keep getting better over time as we continue to work with it, just like a human employee. So I'm curious about your perspective on how managers can sort of prepare for this world of digital labor, digital employees, plus human labor, human employees, because it's definitely going to be a very interesting mix, and we're already kind of there.
Yeah, you're spot on. And in fact, because as I mentioned, these AI agents can act autonomously with minimal supervision, and they can think, they can reason, they can take actions. They're not just tools, just like you said, they are intelligent digital workers. And that is where we believe that this whole notion of digital labor is going to be out there. And, my prediction is that every single customer experience will shift due to AI agents. And I think as leaders and as, folks in the software industry, it is absolutely critical for us to be prepared for this revolution and kind of like, making sure that we are ready to manage this digital labor. So I don't know if you may have heard, our CEO, Mark Benioff, recently said that 2025 is the last year that CEOs will be managing human-only workforce because we're now going to have human and digital employees working side by side. And I would extend that statement to say that this is the last year that any manager, any people manager is going to be managing people-only workforces, right? So I think adopting AI as an intellectual partner is one of the most critical skills that leaders can build in order to manage both human and digital labor together. So a few specific areas that come to mind in terms of the influence as well as where we can better prepare are number one, decision making and speed of innovation, because as leaders and managers, we make decisions every day. And there's vast amount of data available to us for decision making. And while that's a great thing, it can actually also become a blocker because analyzing all of that data, especially structured and unstructured data, can really slow things down. So one of the areas where we are seeing a lot of momentum is leveraging AI agents as digital employees to analyze all of the structured and unstructured data to identify patterns, blind spots, and recommendations, and even for managers and leaders to simulate scenarios to test their decisions can really help leaders make faster decisions that are more objective and data driven. And I think another area would be really for managers and leaders to scale themselves in multiple domains, right? To be effective leaders, we have to have a wide horizontal view as opposed to like specializing in just one area. For example, we need to think about strategic planning, operational excellence, etc. Having AI agents working with us in our teams will really help us go deep into those areas, because I think trying to do everything ourselves, number one, is very, very hard. And number two, it's inefficient at best. So having AI help us will really, help with our cognitive amplification. And finally, I would say maybe there's one more area that comes to mind, which is probably one of the most important ones, is innovation. Because I think inviting AI agents as part of your team, as your digital employees into the creative and ideation process will really generate and uncover new ideas and strategies that we may not have thought about. And I think this is kind of like having a creative whiteboarding session anytime you want without having to bring a whole team together. And the beauty of this whole creative relationship with AI is what I call compound learning, meaning we as humans are learning new experiences, but at the same time, the AI is also getting smarter based on our input. So I think the leaders who embrace these concepts sooner will really be the winners in the future.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, I think what I find really intriguing about digital labor and digital employees and these AI agents is that efficiency piece that you mentioned, because I feel like, and of course the creative brainstorming that it allows us to do. But I think what I've seen it already do is allow humans to be more humans, because we can focus less on this like data crunching, repetitive tasks and focus more on, how can I actually provide like a great customer experience? How can I spend some more time thinking about this or meeting my customers or my employees wherever they are? So I think this like human plus AI future is not just one of like, oh, great, we get to be more efficient and do more work and work harder, but also one of I get to like focus on the things that give me more joy and play in my work. So that's what I'm most excited about for this.
100%. I think as we think about, in fact, I spend a lot of time working with customers in the field, and there are some misconceptions out there as well. And one of the misconceptions is really around the fact that, hey, the AI agents are going to completely replace human labor. And the reality is it's far from the truth. That is just not the case. And what you mentioned about AI agents taking on a lot of these rudimentary tasks and that are repetitive in nature, that are not really interesting and exciting in nature, I think really gives us as humans a lot more time to really focus on things that are, and especially from a customer experience perspective, our customers also need that human touch and that conversation with a human, depending on the situation and the context. And I think now we will have a lot more time. It's interesting, when I talk to a lot of my team members, they want to do a lot of that work. They want to spend a lot more time in those capacities, in those conversations. But the reality is that in order for them to do their job and hit their KPIs, there's a lot of that work which isn't necessarily exciting work that they have to do. And that's just the nature of business today, right? So I think AI agents will make a huge difference. So yeah, I completely agree with your assessment.
Sometimes scaling means giving your people the backup they need to crush the big stuff. That's where Agentforce comes in. Agentforce gives your team a smart digital workforce that actually gets work done. These AI agents answer customers, route requests, and hand off complex issues to humans seamlessly, all with the full context of your Salesforce CRM. They're not guessing, they're not hallucinating, they're acting on your data and the rules that you set. The result? Faster service, less chaos, and your team gets to focus on work that truly moves the needle. All momentum, no burnout. Visit salesforce.com/agentforce. Are there any other misconceptions that you think people have around AI agents, or just maybe AI adoption in general when it comes to business?
Definitely. I think as we have kind of like, started working with customers, there is a bunch of different things where I would say there are some misconceptions that people are thinking maybe too deeply into, and those are just not true. So as I mentioned, the first one is really around AI agents completely replacing human beings, right?
Yeah,
so that's
it's a big one.
definitely something which we don't believe is going to be the case. The second one I would say would be around some misconceptions about the accuracy of and you may have heard the word hallucinations, right? Which is essentially the AI agents or AI making stuff up or answering the questions. And I think a big part of that really comes down to the data that you're feeding to your AI agents, right? So at the end of the day, your AI agents are only as good as the quality and the consistency of the data that you're providing to them. So yes, if the data is not accurate, the answers might be inaccurate. So there are workarounds to it, which is, clean up your data, make it consistent. And that's something which at Salesforce, we help our customers do every single day. So once you can fix the underlying problem, then a lot of these issues around hallucinations and inaccurate things go away. I think there's a misconception around trust. And as an example, at Salesforce, as part of our Agentforce platform, trust is just embedded into the platform. This isn't something that you have to build separately. That's why I talked about this notion of guardrails, because one of the big misconceptions customers have is that AI agents can just go rogue and start working autonomously without any kind of human intervention. Again, that's a misconception which isn't just true, because as an organization building AI agents using a platform like Agentforce, specifically Agentforce, you can put those guardrails around and you can actually tell the agent what it can and cannot do. And this isn't like too different than, for example, when you have a new employee come into your organization, right? The first day your employee comes in, you don't really open up the entire organization and access to them. You give them access to what their job requires, and then you kind of start growing from there. So I think that's another area which definitely is a misconception. Maybe one more I will share is this notion of the fact that AI agents and the AI large language models operate in a black box, meaning you don't really know what's going on from a reasoning and thinking perspective, and you can't really control it. And I'll give you a perfect example that if you're using Agentforce, and the way we help our customers create and build and test agents is that when you are testing an agent, and in fact, testing is a very, very important component of deploying AI agents. When you're testing an agent using Agentforce, you can actually see the step-by-step thinking and the reasoning that the agent is doing. So you know exactly how the agent is getting to a particular decision. And you have the opportunity to go and tweak it, make, give it different instructions or give it different type of data. So I think that's a big misconception that customers are struggling with these days.
I mean, from personally using ChatGPT, I can't see that reasoning, right? There's no under the hood for me whenever I'm using a tool like that. So having access to something that does let you see, oh, here's where I went wrong. It's almost like whenever you're debugging code, but now I can actually read line by line what the reasoning method was and how I might be able to change that. So I think it's a really important component of all of this. You sort of shared now a lot of how you guys are thinking about implementing Agentforce, and I would like to hear more about what your team is actually doing when it comes to implementation. So for the Agentforce Acceleration team, what does your day-to-day job really look like?
I'm happy to talk about that topic. That's one of my favorite topics, And before I jump into my specific team and what we do with our customers, I think it's important to understand, how our team came about and how we came about so quickly. So number one, customer success is one of our top values. Salesforce is a values-driven company. That's one of the reasons why I've been around for 13 years myself. And it really is core to our company's mission and our team's mission, which is making our customers successful. So our team's mission is very simple. Make our customers widely successful in their agentic journey using Agentforce, right? So we launched this team. We, in fact, launched Agentforce at Dreamforce last year. And I'm very grateful to be part of this team. And we launched this team shortly thereafter. Our team is a team of highly skilled and technical Agentforce engineers. And we are laser focused on helping our customers create and deploy AI agents to achieve critical business outcomes. Now, the reality is that every company has more jobs to be done than the resources that are available to them to do those jobs or people available to them, right? And Agentforce really helps companies build AI agents that work together with humans to drive customer success. And we say, if you can describe it, Agentforce can do it.
I love that.
In a natural language description fashion. So my team's responsibility and my responsibility is to work with our customers closely in a hands-on capacity, help them ideate on what use cases they need to be thinking about, help them create, test, deploy agents in real life, in real time, and really help them on their journey, right? So I think we are 100% focused on Agentforce. That is the one thing that we're focused on. So anything which is around helping our customers build and deploy these agents and any kind of technical blockers that come along with it, those are the things that we help our customers remove and get live with agents as quickly as possible so they can get to their business outcomes as quickly as possible.
I think the timeline of all this is actually really interesting because for those who don't know, Dreamforce was September last year, right? Or was it October 2024? Yeah. So it's been less than a year that you've started to go through this whole journey of implementation. So we're still like really early stages from a technology adoption standpoint and like actually seeing how does this work in my company and what are the results. So from your perspective, again, like acknowledging that this has only been, 7 or 8 months now, what use cases have you seen be the best ones so far for companies? And like, what are you seeing people really like dig into and love with what they're doing with Agentforce?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think, as I mentioned, in terms of what we do with our customers, we're not only helping them with the technical aspects of Agentforce, we are actually helping them with identifying the right use cases because I think that is, in fact, one of the blockers is starting with the wrong.
That's like one of the hardest parts for sure. Yeah, figuring out what to do with this new technology because it's like, oh, I could do anything I want. How do I narrow that down? So I think that's probably one of the key portions that you guys get to help with.
100%. So narrowing it down and really focusing on the right use cases is the absolute important thing, right? So before I jump into the use cases, I think I'll give you a little bit more perspective in terms of the areas where we specifically help our customers because that will actually help identifying how we help them with the use cases, right? So as I already mentioned that, AI agent setup, configuration, development, testing, all of the things that we help our customers with. But then if you think about Agentforce and AI agents working, there's a lot of other components that are required in order for the AI agents to be successful. We already talked a little bit about data, but our team really helps our customers with technical architecture guidance, whether it comes to data cloud. You may have heard terms like RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, or large language models. So a lot of the technical architecture guidance is needed in order to have AI agents to be effective. Sometimes there are technical blockers around integration and other systems where the data might be residing. So all of those things are things that our team provides those recommendations. And in some cases, there are even some non-technical things that can be a blocker around change management. So these are the type of things that, from a day-to-day perspective, my team engages with the customers. Now, going back to the question about the use cases, I think what's interesting is that there are a couple of different lenses that I apply when I think about use cases. There are use cases that are specific to industries like manufacturing or retail or financial services. And then there are use cases that are specific to the organizational persona, like if you are part of the customer service organization or if you're part of sales or marketing, there are different things that you could be using the AI agents for. But eventually, I think the best way to think about the different agentic use cases is to think about the jobs that your organization needs to do. And then we break it down into two broad categories: external customer-facing use cases, where your AI agents are interfacing and interacting with your customers, and then internal employee-facing use cases, where the AI agents are helping your company employees. So from a customer-facing perspective, I think customer service and support continues to be the most prominent and most common use case. I think this is where there is, most amount of customer interaction. So these are things like when customers are reaching out to your organization for different inquiries, they have different questions, there are different issues that need to be resolved. So that is where the agents can really help customers answer those questions. But then you can really start taking it to the next level by taking actions. For example, the agent might answer a question, but if the question doesn't resolve the customer's issue, the agent can actually now go ahead and create a case. The agent can escalate the issue to a human. They can schedule appointments. They can authenticate users. So there's a lot of those actions that you can start building on top of the basic FAQ or answering question kind of capability. Then we see use cases around order management. That's a really big one. One of the industries that I focus on is retail and consumer goods, which is, by the way, a fantastic industry. There's a lot of really interesting logos I work with. So things like if I placed an order and the order hasn't arrived, where is my order? That's kind of like one of the most common use cases. Processing returns, changing my delivery address or processing refunds. So these are all the things that fall under the bucket of that order management use case. And then, as I mentioned, there are industry-specific use cases like sticking with the retail industry. One of the most exciting use cases we are seeing is this notion of a personal shopper. So the reality is that, recommendations aren't new. Different retailers, if you go to their website, have been recommending products for a very, very long time. But that has been very, very predictive, and that's very limited, right? So now what we believe is that the AI agents that we are helping our customers build today, they not only know your purchase history, but they actually know your style. They know maybe the event that you're trying to attend. So they are going to make personalized recommendations that aren't just based on what you're browsing, but rather based on who you are as a person, right? And then finally, the second component of these use cases is really around what I mentioned as employee use cases. And the possibilities there are, Lacey, completely limitless, right? I mean, anything that you can think of within your organization to help your employees save time, coach them, those are the type of use cases, right? So a really big use case is sales coaching, where you can now have AI agents that can provide real-time, context-specific, coaching to your sales reps or your any kind of employee, right? We also see a lot of HR and employee self-service use cases. In fact, at Salesforce, we use these use cases ourselves. We're a big user of Slack. And Slack, by the way, is a fantastic collaboration platform. So within Slack, we have our own AI agents where if I have a question about my benefits or a particular company policy, or if I want to know how to manage my time off or expenses, etc., now I don't need to pick up the phone. I don't need to log a ticket. I can literally just have a Slack conversation with an AI agent. It will give me the answers. And depending on the situation, if it can't solve it, it might create a ticket and then route it to the right person. So I think as we think about all of these things, they are different use cases that we are seeing commonly applied at customers. And again, as I said, that we at Salesforce like to drink our own champagne. That's something which we are doing ourselves. And one more use case I'll throw out there, which I've been using personally myself very extensively, is this whole notion of, knowledge management and knowledge answers, right? So if you think about it, almost 80% of an organization's data that sits in your company today is unstructured. So these are things like emails, PDFs, and Slack conversations, etc. When you want to find an answer, in order to find the answer, going through all of this unstructured data can take hours and hours, right? So now AI agents can actually sift through all of this data, structured, unstructured, videos, transcripts, etc., and then it can basically give you the answer. So you ask the question, you get the answer. You don't really have to go through tons and tons of those data elements. So I think those are a few very exciting and common use cases that we are seeing across the board.
That last one I love. We use the enterprise version or the business version of ChatGPT in our company, and we're able to hook it up to the Google Drive, and it can search all of our documents from years past and find, oh, here's the blurb about this. Here's this thing. It doesn't go as deep as Slack or, email, unfortunately, but I find that ability to just be able to search our knowledge super quickly is just so helpful. So I love that function. I'm curious, are you seeing like percentage-wise more internal application of AI agents versus external, or is it roughly like the same?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I would say is that part of that also depends on the industry that the customers are in. For example, if you think about some of the regulated customers that sit in regulated industries, that there's a lot of different compliance and policies. So in order to test out agentic use cases, those customers try to do it internally. So there is minimal risk, as opposed to, for example, if you are a retailer and you are simply answering questions about, the size of the attire or the clothing that you're selling, I think that's like a low risk. Even if there's a little bit of a mistake made there, it's not that much exposure. So I would say it's a pretty good balance because we work with customers across all different industries. But I would categorize customer service and support as really the top one. Order management is kind of like the next one. And then now we're starting to see a lot of employee and internal facing, which is again going to be applicable to every industry, every company. But we're seeing more of that happening in the regulated sector more.
So we talked a little bit about different industries, but I'm curious, we haven't talked about company size. So I'm curious, is there like an ideal size for a company to make this investment into AI agents? Or is this something that you think no matter what industry, no matter what size, no matter how old or young your company is, this is something you should be looking at?
I would say that if your company today requires people and human employees to do the jobs you want to do, you're ready for AI agents.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of like the litmus test that I would put. So it doesn't really matter if you are a startup and you are only a few people. And it also doesn't matter if you are a big company like Salesforce with almost 75,000 employees. I think the value prop is absolutely there. So, and in fact, I would say that for smaller companies, there might actually be a bigger value prop because for smaller companies, they are constrained by the number of people that exist there physically, right? So you want to do a lot more for your customers, and everybody's wearing different hats, right? I mean, I actually worked in a startup for a few years myself, and it's interesting that even though I had a specific title, I had a specific team, but I was actually playing a lot of different roles because
All
in
of
my
them.
region,
Yep.
all of them, right? So I think for startups and small companies, this is going to be a phenomenal opportunity to do a lot more with less resources. And I would actually throw in one very interesting use case out there, which is, as I mentioned, that we use our own AI agents internally. And one of the use cases that I found very inspiring is coaching, right? And certifications, right? Where we, within Salesforce, we do our own corporate certification and a bunch of different things that are required. And instead of like presenting to my manager, I present it to an AI agent, just like I would in real life. And the AI agent is able to listen to my pitch. The AI agent is able to give me real-time feedback on what worked well, what didn't work well. And as you apply this lens to company sizes, think about it. Smaller companies, in many cases, don't have the budget or the resources and access to leadership training that, for example, a big company like Salesforce might have, right? Now with AI agents, because these AI agents are trained on the same data set as large companies use, we'll see a lot of democratization of training and knowledge management, where it doesn't really matter how big or small your company is. You can basically get the same type of training and leadership development as large organizations.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. As you were talking, I was thinking more about these different use cases. And, we talked about how this initial discernment of this is a good use case for AI agents and this one maybe isn't, or maybe we should put this like further down the roadmap. What advice would you give to a company that is looking at different use cases and they're trying to figure out which one would be quote unquote agent ready?
I think for companies, because I hear this from customers all the time that, hey, is my company ready? Is my department ready? And I tell them the time is now. As I said, if you're ready to hire employees to do a job, your company is already ready. But I think from a use case perspective, that's a really great question because as you mentioned earlier, that there are hundreds of things that AI agents can do. So the question then becomes, what is the starting point? And where do we start? How do we prioritize? So I think if you look at all the different jobs that your organization needs to do, generally speaking, we recommend that, hey, if you have use cases where there is clearly defined and repeatable process, there are clear inputs and outputs and decision points, those are the type of use cases that are easy to build, test, and deploy. So you can really test the new AI agents and then you can start showing the value. We always recommend to start with low or moderate risk profile. For example, I mentioned, where's my order or FAQs. These are generally speaking, low risk situations because this allows you to build your agentic foundation. And once that foundation is built, for example, if you have built an AI agent that allows your customers to track their orders, gives them frequently asked answers to frequently asked questions, then you can start adding more and more actions on top of it, right? Where you can add an action that says now create a case, process a return. So I would recommend don't start with a use case where you're refunding customers because if errors happen there, you've got financial exposure. Start with low to moderate risk profile. And I think a really big component of starting use cases is having access to high quality and relevant data, because a big part of Agentforce is, and one of the value propositions and differentiators of Agentforce is our ability to ground the agent's work and actions in your company's data, because that is where all the context is sitting, right? Because you need to know who this customer is, what is their purchase history, what is their, what kind of opportunities exist. So all of that is what we call grounding the agent into the relevant data, and Agentforce is able to do it. So having access to clean data in order to make decisions, take actions, is very, very important. And it's interesting that, every company has, sets of clean data. Like if you think about your knowledge base or your billing data, generally speaking, those are clean sets of data. So start there. And maybe a couple of other things I would say would be start with like high volume, high frequency use cases that are taking too much of human time, right? If you have those type of use cases, you can actually show quick ROI to your organization. And the last thing I would say is being able to measure the outcomes is very important. So having a clear value prop in terms of, okay, with these AI agents, who is benefiting? How are they benefiting and by how much? For example, if we can say that, hey, you deployed AI agents into your call center and your average handle time has gone down by 20%, that's a very tangible number that the organization can understand and work with.
We all expect fast service now, but inside most companies, speed is still a struggle. It's the approval chains, the handoffs, the who owns what debate. Agentforce cuts through the mess and actually takes action. It talks to your customers, crushes tasks, and keeps things flowing, all based on prompts and rules that you set, so your customers aren't waiting and your team isn't stuck in the weeds. Speed isn't just a nice to have. It's a competitive edge, and Agentforce helps you deliver it 24/7. Learn more at salesforce.com/agentforce. I think what's interesting too about this idea of starting with something that is measurable or highly repeatable, like versus there's some risk with doing something with financial information, for example, or offering refunds, is that it gives your team an opportunity to get used to working with AI agents as well, because there is a huge component of this that's not just technological. It's like the people. How do we get our teams ready? How do we get our teams thinking about this and as part of their workflow daily? How do we get them bought in and not let them fall into a place of fear that they might be replaced? So I think I like that you would start there because it gives an opportunity in so many different ways of not just being able to use the technology, but also work with the teams. So from that perspective, is there any advice you might have for people who are thinking about that change management piece that's really like people focused?
Yes, I think that is a great question, because there's definitely a mindset shift that we all need to make, especially as leaders, because our teams, follow the managers and follow the leaders in many cases. So it's very important to understand, why are we making this change, right? So change management in any technological shift is very important. But I think in this particular transformation, which is probably the biggest transformation any one of us has ever seen, it is going to be absolutely paramount. So from a change management perspective, I would say a few things, right? The first thing is it is very important for the leaders to start adopting AI themselves, because it is very difficult to champion something if you authentically have not leveraged that before or you haven't experienced it yourself, right? So I would say maybe pick one or two areas in your daily life, apply AI in that and AI agents into that flow of work so your teams can see that, right? Number two, it's very important for everybody in the organization to understand what's in it for them, right? So because again, if I am a call center agent and we've talked about call centers a lot. Let me talk a little bit about software engineering, right? So you may have heard of new companies coming up like Cursor and companies like that actually write code or software engineers. In fact, Salesforce, we were one of the first companies to build an AI agent called Code Genie that wrote a lot of code and still writes a lot of code for our engineers. So if I'm a software engineer and I want to build an amazing product, there's a lot of repetitive work which may not be super value added, but I kind of have to do it in order to build those building blocks. If I can have an AI agent, which is working side by side with me as an assistant, take on all of that work and spend, now I have magically 20, 30, 50% of my time open up so I can really focus on creative problem solving. I think that's something that will drastically boost productivity, and it will really give people that ability to do work on interesting creative problems. So I think making sure that folks understand that, hey, we're not deploying this, coding agent in order to replace you. Rather, we're deploying this coding agent so our overall engineering productivity goes up. That is very, very critical. So I think having the mindset shift, explaining the why, explaining the what's in it for me, for every individual who's going to be working with these AI agents is very, very important. And I would maybe say one more thing, which is maybe two more things. One is around this culture of experimentation and innovation. I think if you think about generative AI, it's a new field. Obviously, there's a lot of, improvements that are happening every single day. Like the AI models that existed 2 years ago. Today, they are completely
Mhm.
different. Their capacity, their ability, their intelligence. And it's not about having the right answers on the first go. It's about asking the right questions. And in order to create that environment of asking the right questions, we need to create a culture of experimentation and innovation that even if we don't get it right the first time, we shouldn't just shut it down. We should like keep working. We should keep, giving feedback. So these models and these AI agents become better and better over time. So I think those are a few things that I can think of from a change management perspective. And this is a area that is evolving so rapidly. What was true 3 months ago or 6 months ago is not true today. But these are some fundamental change management things that I would say are very, very critical. And maybe the last thing is adoption, right? Because just because you have an agentic technology available to you or an AI agent available doesn't mean that people are going to start magically using it, right? So making sure that we are focusing on user
For sure.
adoption
Yeah.
and adoption of these technologies is very important.
So I love all these lessons and takeaways from change management that you've shared with us. But what other lessons and challenges have you guys faced in the early phase? I mean, again, it's only been like 7 or 8 months. So I'm sure you guys have just been noticing one thing after another thing after another thing. And the lessons probably haven't stopped yet. And they probably won't since the technology is improving so dramatically all the time. So what advice would you have for people that are maybe looking at starting their agentic journey now that like you wish you would have known a couple months ago?
Yes, and I'm smiling because, yes, the lessons we're learning every single day. And what's interesting, Lacey, is that Agentforce adoption has just been mind-blowing. We have signed up thousands of customers, and what's really
Wow.
exciting is that customers are ready and they're hungry to get on this journey. And then that's what we're doing, helping our customers, right? So the speed at which customers have adopted and embraced Agentforce is just unprecedented, and the speed with which these AI agents are being created is just unbelievable. So yes, I mean, there are some lessons that we have learned, like some things that were more hypotheses at the beginning, and now we have actually seen it in action, and it's kind of like been proven that yes, these are the things that are absolutely necessary. I would say the first one, which I've highlighted a little bit, is really data is the key to success, right? So AI agents are only as good and effective as the knowledge that they can access. So having outdated or incomplete knowledge bases leads to poor answers and hallucinations. So I think data is the key. The other really big piece we have seen is how you have set up and created your knowledge base. So there's a big difference between, so for example, a lot of times customers would have, hey, we have these 1,000 articles. So why can't the agent use it? So there's a difference between a well-written and a poorly written article.
Yeah.
So kind of like, taking it one level deeper is very, very important. Now, one of the things you may have heard probably 2 years ago or a year and a half ago is this notion of prompt design and prompt engineering. And I think everybody knows that, hey, the question that you give to your AI agent is the prompt. But the importance of prompt design and engineering has just been unbelievable in terms of what we see with the customer. So I think it's all about asking better questions, because the better question you ask, the better instructions you give to your AI agent, you will get better and better generative results. So giving clear instructions, well-defined instructions, avoiding broad categories. Like, again, I'll give the analogy of a human employee. When you hire somebody new in your organization, you don't really just give them all the manuals and all the policies, right? You start with what's part of their job. So you kind of like, break it down into modular design. And the same thing applies with AI agents, right? So that's what we recommend to our customers, that, break it down into modular design and build from there. And focusing on guardrails is very important, right? A lot of times we see that customers are focusing on what the agent should be doing. I think what's equally important is what the agent should not be doing and what they cannot do. And what are the places where they need to like really escalate to humans. And that is where this notion of principle of least privilege comes in, which is when you build an agent, start with the least amount of access and then start building more and more access as it is needed. Another big lesson we have learned, which again, is a common theme in software development anyways, but I think in the agentic world, it is absolutely critical, which is this notion of continuous iteration and testing in order to make your agents better and better. So what's interesting is that in generative AI, which obviously AI agents use generative AI, nothing is really hard-coded, right? Result one that you get from the same question might be slightly different than result two. And this isn't like too different than a human conversation either. For example, we're having this conversation today, and unless I'm using a script, if you ask me the same question tomorrow or next week, the choice of my words might be slightly different. So it's not going to be a 100% exact same response, but the underlying answer and the core answer should really be the same. And the same thing applies to AI agents, right? I think that is where this whole notion of testing and continuous iteration is absolutely critical. And one of the differences is that since the questions and prompts your end users can ask can be different, so that is why we recommend doing automated testing at scale. And in fact, within Agentforce, we provide this really amazing tool called Testing Center, which allows you to do automated testing at scale to really apply different types of questions to make sure that the type of answers that are being generated are really critical and they're really accurate. And the last thing I will say is start small and scale strategically. Don't try to automate everything at once. Begin with high volume, well-defined, repeatable use cases to really prove the ROI for yourself and your organization. Build that confidence and then start building complex scenarios on top of it.
You mentioned modular design in there. So I have a little bit of an off-topic question for you. I've noticed that there's been, whenever people are building AI agents, they tend to have like, this is my agent that does outreach, or this is my agent that handles this request. This agent deals with locating a package. So whenever we're thinking about like an ecosystem of different digital employees all connecting, how do you define this is the role of this one, and at a certain point we're kind of outside the role of that one and we need to build another one that does this specific thing? Like, at what point are we kind of getting to, okay, now we have to have a second agent, now we have to have a third agent, and now we want to connect them all?
Yeah, it's a great question, because in fact that is something which we are starting to see the future of agentic world in terms of how all these agents will interoperate and talk to each other. I'm happy to talk about that in more detail if needed. But I think going back to your original question, it really starts with the role that you want the agent to play, because that is the job that the agent should be doing, right? So I think really getting down to the notion of, okay, I want this agent to help customers answering frequently asked questions. I want this agent to help customers track their orders. I want this agent to help customers process a refund as needed. So these are like different jobs that you want the agent to do. And naturally speaking, there is going to be situations where, the job that the agent is doing is starting to go into a different department or organizational line. That is the point that you want to start, thinking about building a second agent. And I think, again, going back to, I think the organizational hierarchy and the organizational lines are one really good litmus test. The other one, as I mentioned, is about keeping things lean. And as opposed to like bundling way too many things into one agent, too many instructions, I think that's where things start becoming a little bit more difficult to operate. And that's where even you start seeing things like latency of responses and things of that nature. So having that modular design, focusing and starting with the job that you want the agent to do and keeping it as lean as possible. And anytime you've got a different version of the job that needs to be done, starting to think about a secondary agent that can do that job is important. And I think that's where this whole notion of agent to agent communication, you will start hearing a lot more about that. Because right now, everything that we are talking about is a human interacting with an agent, whether it's employee facing or customer facing. But what you're going to start seeing is that for an agent to perform their job, they may actually need multiple other agents to go and do their job in order for that one task to be completed. And I think that's where this whole notion of agent to agent collaboration, communication is something which is becoming really big right now.
Yeah. I'm fascinated to see where that goes and like how these ecosystems of agents are going to start to play out. I feel like there's just going to be so many tasks that can get done just I'm going to say autonomously, automatically on their own because of the whole ecosystem of agents and how that's going to look. So I'm interested to see kind of under the hood how those things will actually be interconnected in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think like you may have started hearing about protocols like A2A that Google started a few months ago.
Yeah.
There's another protocol called MCP, Model Context Protocol, that Anthropic came up with a few months ago. And these things are like super new. They only came out, a few months ago. And we are, in fact, last week I had a conversation with a customer and we took a deep dive into that whole A2A and MCP piece because of the reason that, is like the example that I'll give you is that if you have a team of people sitting together and working together, and they're all speaking different languages, it will be very difficult for them to be able to work together and accomplish tasks together. But now if suddenly all of them are speaking the exact same language, you can see their productivity and collaboration and the impact on their productivity and collaboration. So I think it's the same thing with these protocols like A2A, which essentially in a nutshell will allow AI agents to talk to each other and collaborate with each other, irrespective of which platform they're built on.
You mentioned KPIs a little bit earlier in our conversation and trying to like track and have really clear results for these agents before you even start deploying them. So when you're talking to the teams that you work with, the companies that you work with about measuring success, what type of KPIs and metrics are you looking at? What parameters are you putting together for these teams? Yeah, I feel like I haven't like heard a really clear list of KPIs of like, if you're doing this, then look at that. So if you had that, I think our audience would love it.
Sure. I think that's a super important question because I believe you cannot improve what you cannot measure. So having that set of KPIs is absolutely important. And I think as leaders are thinking about the success of agentic AI, like at Agentforce as an example, we should not only think about in terms of technical performance, but in terms of tangible business value and strategic impact to your business. So the KPIs that you choose should really reflect the specific goals of your agentic deployment, whether it's cost reduction, revenue growth, customer satisfaction, or even employee productivity. So I think the key principles to keep in mind while you're measuring success for your AI agents are, number one, all of your KPIs must be business outcomes driven, right? So shift from just AI metrics to business metrics impacted by AI. I think I previously gave example of the software engineering piece where the code is being written by tools like Code Genie and Cursor, etc. So a wrong KPI would be what percentage of code is written by AI. I don't think that matters. What the right KPI would be, what is the percentage improvement in your engineering team's output, right? That is the thing that really matters. So writing more code is not the objective. Delivering amazing products in the software world is the ultimate objective. I think the other piece important for KPIs is benchmarking. So you should always think about the before and after, measure against maybe even human performance. As an example, at Salesforce, we use our own agents in a variety of different places, including our help site. And in fact, within our support organization, we do a side-by-side comparison between how an AI agent is performing and how a human person is performing in that service organization. So I think that's an important piece. We should also look at hard and soft ROI, both in terms of quantifiable financial gain or cost savings, as well as qualitative improvements like what has been the employee's experience and your customer's experience working in the agentic world. So some key objective agentic APIs that I'm starting to see are efficiency and cost reduction. If you are within the service use case, which is the most common use case we see, the average handle time impact. What is the agent handle resolution rate, which is essentially the number of tasks that your AI agent successfully resolved. I think that's a very important KPI. Case deflection is a big one. Average task completion time is a big one because you certainly want your AI agents to be not only completing the tasks, but doing it efficiently and effectively. And then what is the cost per agent resolved interaction, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, having a good understanding of that cost is important. As I mentioned that, we use Agentforce and our own AI agents within our service department. We actually track the CSAT that the customers are giving for those cases resolved by AI agents, and then compare that to the CSAT with the human agents. I think there's another bucket of KPIs around the accuracy rate, which is essentially like how many times did the agent have to hand off to a human or the escalation needed to happen versus the agent being able to resolve the problem on their own. And then also, I think in some cases, when I talk to customers, I always talk to them about this notion of growth mindset. If you think about it, cost savings are great. And a lot of these KPIs around cost savings are absolutely needed. But the other component is the impact of AI agents on revenue, meaning how much productivity uplift for humans did you create? Maybe how many leads were converted because of using AI agents. So those are like some very objective KPIs that we're starting to see.
That's a really great list. And with that, you mentioned accuracy, right? And I have been doing a little bit of a deep dive into how accurate are these AI agents, how accurate are, LLMs. And we've talked a little bit about hallucinations, and it's like this huge fear. And I think the fear of the possible mistake is really limiting people's desire to embrace these tools, faster. So I am curious to how you're thinking about this like quality assurance piece, governance, guardrails, like how should people be thinking about that? And what level of inaccuracy might be acceptable? Because I think about it too with humans, people aren't 100% correct all the time either. So like, I think chasing this 100% idea of like this AI agent needs to be 100% accurate all the time maybe doesn't make a lot of sense, because from a human perspective, we definitely aren't. Though there seems to be this, like what I'm calling this trust gap, where we're more okay with a human making a mistake. We're like, oh, that's okay, no problem, than we are with an AI tool, right? Like a robot. Like for whatever reason with technology, we're like, oh, this thing, we cannot allow any mistakes ever. So there is this like weird trust gap that I see for sure with that. But yeah, can you speak into that at all with how think people can be thinking about what level of inaccuracy might be okay and sort of what the trade-offs are there?
Yeah, that's that's such a fantastic observation, Lacey, because that's why there's the statement to err is human, right? I think
yeah,
it is absolutely true that, no human is perfect. We make mistakes as well. And I think it's important to, again, understand how AI agents work. And they are really, working in a similar type of capacity as humans do, which is being able to reason and think and understand the context and being able to ground in the information and data that you have available and then take action. So naturally speaking, there is answers and decisions that are being generated as opposed to being hard coded. So naturally speaking, there's going to be some of that error margin. So I would say that there are some key tenets that we share with our customers in terms of, not only responsible and trustworthy, but also ethical AI development. So the first one is obviously trust is number one value and foundation. Even as a company, trust is our number one value. And I do agree completely that a lot of people are skeptical about accuracy of the responses. And I think that is very crucial for brand loyalty and growth, not just from a compliance perspective. So definitely that's something that needs to be taken very, very seriously. I think data security and privacy are also non-negotiable. There is vast amounts of sensitive customer data that sits in your systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to make sure that you have robust security measures, there's things like, so our platform Agentforce allows for things like data masking, zero data retention policies, and we're really helping customers be in compliance with the regulations that exist in their industry. So that's why, when you use Agentforce as an example, trust is actually built into the platform. It's not something which kind of like operates on the side. It's actually built right in. And I think, this whole notion of ethical development of AI and AI ethics, they actually require a holistic framework. And at Salesforce, like one of the things that we tell our customers, if there are some trusted AI principles that hold true. And those are, number one, accuracy, which is delivering verifiable results. So as an example, when you ask the question about how do I trust the data? So one of the ways that you can trust the data, if your AI agent can actually cite the sources where they are actually generating that answer from. And if those sources are trusted and verifiable, then yes, the accuracy goes higher. I think from a safety perspective, it is very important to mitigate bias. It is very important to mitigate toxicity and harmful content, right? And even protecting personally identifiable information to really prevent any kind of data leakage. I would say transparency is a very, very critical tenet, which is disclosing that when you are using AI, when responses are generated using AI, and also explaining the decision-making process. Just like I mentioned, when you are testing the agents in Agentforce, you can actually see the decision tree. You can actually see the reasoning and the thinking. So figuring out a way to expose whatever you can to your end users will create more and more transparency. And I think the other big component is really, breaking this silo of this black box, which is empowering the humans in order to augment their capability, essentially maintaining human control. So this whole notion of human in the loop is really essential for responsible AI development, because we are designing AI agents to augment humans, not to replace human capabilities, right? And I think that's where humans need to be able to review and audit anything that the AI agents are saying and be able to challenge it. And finally, I think there's one more component which maybe we haven't really talked about, but it is very, very important, which is sustainability and the impact on the environment. Because if you think about it, these AI models are very energy intensive, right? They consume a lot of energy. So essentially the idea becomes, okay, how do you develop the right size models to reduce the carbon footprint and things of that nature is something which is very important. In fact, sustainability is one of the core values of our company. And that's where it directly applies to how you think about agentic development, because if you need to solve for 10% of the problem, there is no reason for you to build a model that solves for 100% because that's going to take that much more energy and it's going to have that much more of an impact. So those are a few things that we recommend to our customers from a quality perspective.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you. I know we're coming up here towards the end of the interview,
Yeah.
but before I'm going to let you go, I have to ask you about predictions for the future. I feel like even a couple of years ago when we'd ask folks for like, hey, what's your prediction for the next 5 years? What's your prediction for the next 10 years in terms of technology? People would be willing to answer that. Now, when I ask people to think that far out, no one's willing to answer that. They're like, no, I can't possibly think past like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. So whatever you feel comfortable with, maybe it's the end of the year, maybe it's next year. What technology you're most excited about? What are you like betting on? What is Salesforce, if you can tease a little bit in the works on? I would love to hear all of that.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think the way things are moving is very, very quick. So what I'm betting on, I'm betting my career on this topic, right? So that's what I am 100%
Yep.
focused on. I am now 100% focused on Agentforce and agentic AI. But I would say some of the things that I can foresee in terms of our interactions with our customers and what we are seeing the world going towards is number one, I think AI agents will be integrated in every function, every role, every job. And it will happen seamlessly in the flow of your work where you're not really swivel chairing to go to a different screen or an application to interact with an agent. It will just be there, right? So I think that interoperability of agents across systems and platforms will be standardized. Right now, as I mentioned, humans are working with agents. One of the biggest shifts you will see is agents working with agents. We will also see this notion of hierarchies of agents where, think about it from an organizational chart perspective, that you will have a manager agent that can delegate tasks to their digital employees, and those employees will go out there and do the job. For example, if you want to onboard a new employee, right? You'll have an agent which will say, hey, go and onboard this new employee. Now, in order to onboard that employee, you'll have an HR agent, you'll have an IT agent, a facilities agent, a payroll agent, and all of these agents will do their job and report back in order to actually get the job done, which is getting the new employee onboarded. So I would say we already touched a little bit on protocols like A2A, which is built by Google. I think that's going to be a really key initiative around communicating, sharing work, collaborating. I think Salesforce is already on top of it. We are supporting all of these different industry standards, all of these different protocols that we are talking about. And I would say, this whole ecosystem of plug and play AI agents and agentic tools is something which is coming right now. In fact, we have a Salesforce Agent Exchange where companies can build agents and they can build capabilities that can be, plug and play. So I think that is critical. Another big thing which is coming is really, and in fact, it's already here. It's not in too distant future, is multiple modalities where right now, I think a lot of the interaction is text-based. So we will see that is going to change significantly in terms of different modalities. So those are a few things that I feel, are changing and happening very, very quickly.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. One last question before we let you get off here. And it's a question we've asked every single guest on the show. What was one experience recently you've had as a customer that you want to shout out?
Yeah. So I recently had a really awesome meeting with one of our customers from Brazil. It's a company called Grupo Primo. And the thing that I want to highlight is that it was, their CTO was in Chicago and his entire team was here. And we had a really awesome conversation. We dug deep into various aspects of Agentforce architecture. But what was really inspirational for me to hear was the level of excitement and education that our customers are already having, right? I mean, our customers are really, it's not something which they are thinking about. It's not something which they are behind in terms of education or enablement. They already know a lot of these things. So all these things that I talked about around agent-to-agent communication, these agent exchanges, like these are the type of things that our customers are talking about right now, and they just want to go fast. And I think this is something which every customer is prioritizing, and having that meeting just a few days ago was super inspirational. It left me not only inspired, but more excited that, everything that we're doing is landing really, really well. And our customers are excited and we are excited to help them.
Oh man, I love that. Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun, Usman. I am so excited that we get to share all this with our audience. Quick plug here. Where can people find more about Agentforce? They probably heard an ad already in this episode, but where would you like to direct people's attention after if they want to follow up and learn more?
Yeah, I would say so learning is big, right? So go to Trailhead, Salesforce's Trailhead site, and get yourself Agentforce and agentic AI educated, right? So what I would recommend everybody should do is become an Agent Blazer innovator. Once you do, that trail and you complete that module, you will see that your level of understanding and education about agents and agentic AI is going to be really, really impactful. So that is the one place I would recommend everybody to go. And the call to action would be become an Agent Blazer innovator. Like that would be the task that I would recommend everybody to do.
Awesome. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.